Hey guys, it's Eagle, and welcome back to another episode inside of Technological Journey. I know it's been a while since I posted last, but I promise you, I've been slowly working here and there. Unfortunately, there's just been some things in life right now that I had to take a step away from YouTube, but I'm back and I'm ready to go. In the last episode, we made insane progress in the IB quest book, and we'll be continuing to make more progress today. Near the end of that last episode, though, we went ahead and built our first assembly line multi-block. Super exciting. And now I'm going to insert some clips here and show what it took to get this thing automated using P2P tunnels and ME interfaces. This process was actually very simple to automate using these components. In order to get this thing up and running though, we also had to go ahead and make extended pattern processing terminals of both the regular and fluid variety. I started with making the regular until I realized that the LUV components actually required some fluids. So that is where the fluid terminal came into play. This will allow us to encode all of the LUV components that we are going to need for crafting moving forward. In order to fully do this though, I had to set up some more machine infrastructure for HSSG components, as they require HV tier and higher to be made. As well as all the solid components that we had to make, we also had to begin with crafting styrene butadiene rubber, which sounds a lot harder to make than it is, and is actually very simple using the setup that I'll show just after this. Aside from building the machines that were necessary to craft this new rubber, we also had to encode many patterns in order to get this stuff able to be crafted on demand. This will not be the last time we do this by any means, but it's a decent start. And yes, I know we are planning on moving to the new base here soon, but as you guys have seen, that has been a large ongoing process. But today just might be the day we start to move some things over. Going off of that, I wanted to show some progress that I have been making on the base. It may not look like it yet, but this is moving along nicely. I want to take my time and make sure this is something that I am truly proud of, and if that means it takes a while to complete, then so be it. I know the base may be a bit plain right now, but once we move into the decoration stage, the base will really begin to pop and show the vision I had from the beginning. As you can see, I have begun planning some basic rooms for some of the processes we are going to want here, such as the AE2 setup and multi-block on-domain crafting. All of this is subject to change, of course, but I needed to do this now to start understanding the space requirements. And we have no shortage of space in this behemoth. If this is your first time watching here, go ahead and subscribe and be on the lookout for the stream where I've done the vast majority of this building. Now, more on styrene butadiene rubber, the next important piece in making more LUV machines. Like I said before, the setup is pretty simple. The first thing that I need to do is make a cracker unit that is going to take the light fuel that we've had stockpiled over the playthrough and steam crack that. Once that happens, we can put that into a distillery that I'll put here on the side and make our butadiene. Once that is complete, we are good to go to autocraft ourselves the next tier of rubber. Back into the world here. And yeah, here is that advanced distillery setup. So anytime we want to request some styrene butadiene rubber, it will go through this setup, and that's what we'll go ahead and craft it. Eventually, this will end up being a full-size distillation tower so we can get all of the other ingredients out of that recipe. The pattern encoding, man, this is not over yet. We still have all of the other LUV components to encode in our extended processing fluid pattern terminal. So let's go ahead and do that. Now that the patterns are taken care of, we can get yet another quest completion in our quest book by crafting ourselves 2 LUV robot arms. Have I mentioned that I love auto-crafting? Our assembly line is by no means quick enough yet either, even at LUV power, and I see many more of these in our future. We also had to quickly rotate this bad boy and extend it to allow it to craft all the recipes we needed, which was just a quick change. Now that those arms are finished crafting, we can move on to the next quest, and that is to create the large circuit assembly line. To do that, I'm going to work on a system here that will allow us to create entire multi-blocks from a single craft. To do this is very simple. Just encode the multi-block pattern with a dummy item. In this case, I'm going to use a named piece of paper, and assuming you have all the other recipes needed for the machine, it will begin to craft them all. The final step is having a chest with an interface attached and a job autocomplete card inserted, as well as that multi-block pattern inside. Now, the final step to autocrafting this multi-block is to make the rest of the patterns for the remaining pieces, like the integral framework, which requires a whole new alloy to create nitinol 60. It's not too bad to make at this point, just need to get it all encoded. Alright, preparations are complete. We can go ahead and start this craft now. With all of our machines going to town to make this. If we did everything correctly, we should see all the components in the chest we created earlier. I'm looking forward to using this trick again to create other important frequently used multi-blocks, like the EBF and the LCR. And here we are. It looks like everything worked properly this time, and we can go ahead and mark this as completed. Nothing left to do here but build this thing. For now, I'm going to place this next to our regular assembly line, and using the Freedom Wrench, we can create a preview of the multi-block, and then again on the build setting to actually build it. Now that we've got this thing hooked up to our power network and have all the P2P tunnels we will need, the next step is to replicate the P2P setup on the assembly line to automate this for when we are ready to craft our first quantum circuits. And it is quantum circuit time. However, we aren't ready quite yet, as there are some things standing in our way. First, we need to make silicone rubber. To do this, the thing holding us back is another alphabet soup name, and I'm gonna do my best here. Polydimethylsiloxane? Okay. Which when added into an LCR with sulfur, we get the new rubber. Greg Tech. For now, we will on-demand craft this, but we will eventually set this to passive along with our polyethylene and PTFE. We need this rubber to create our new quantum transistors and capacitors. Along with the rubber, we need to use some of the byproducts we've been collecting from our nuclear reactor. The next part will be to use the improved Enderize that we set recipes for in the last episode to make qubit CPUs. And along with some other minor pieces, bada bing, bada boom, we are ready to make the circuits. Now that we've delivered all of our new patterns to their correct places, it's about time we put the circuit assembly line to the test and craft 128 of our new quantum circuits. I'm sure this won't take forever. This process was actually way quicker than expected once I made some changes to the system. For some reason, the circuit assembler handles the fluid in a recipe pattern different from the assembly line. Once the fluid P2P was changed to a fluid interface supplying the soldering alloy, the craft went through as normal. I'm not sure why this was the issue, but seeing as the circuit recipes I'll be using in here will only use the soldering alloy, it's actually not that bad. Thanks once again, Greg Tech, for making me question all that I thought I knew about your inner workings. With all that being said though, we were still able to craft a decent amount of circuits, firmly planting us into the age of quantum computing. That's not all I want to do today in terms of circuit progression. I also want to make the next tier of circuit, the quantum assembly. And by the looks of the recipe, the only thing that we need to figure out is how we can get graphene for the quantum resistors. What I didn't know was that this is a much more involved process than I originally thought. Not because of the graphene oxide in the recipe, but the white halide lamp. I mean, really, what in the world is this recipe? I'm making what is essentially a glorified light bulb, and when I saw the recipe for the first time, I was paralyzed with amazement. Either way, we must push on, and once we make the patterns, hopefully this isn't so stressful if we ever need to make one again. It seems as though the theme of today's episode is pattern making. For anyone that has played a Greg Tech pack before, this is nothing new. But for those that haven't, and were considering it, this is a good look into what you will be doing for a large majority of the playthrough. That's the fun part though. The more I encode, the less manual work there is that needs to be done, and will ultimately make our lives easier later down the line. Now, let's continue with some more pattern crafting. Not too much left. In addition to the mass amounts of pattern encoding, some of these steps require new multi-blocks. In order to make cubic zirconia, I thought that a good way to do so would be setting up an implosion compressor. This isn't too bad to make, it's a fairly simple multi-block, and with that we can take TNT and the cubic zirconia dust and compress that into a block, which only then can be cut into plates in the cutting machine. We will also need another LCR set up for some of the recipes that require them. I'm going to use P2P tunnels to automate this one more efficiently and help us moving forward. We're almost done here, and with a few final touches and checking everything is set up properly, now we can make the lamp, and then finally the graphene that we need. After some time has passed, we can grab our halide lamp and begin to craft the graphene. I think it's in our best interest to attempt to passive this, as I see us needing lots and lots of graphene. Here's the setup. We add graphite to the first chemical bath to create the graphite oxide, with the graphite oxidation solution. The outputs of this are going to be split into two machines, with the graphite oxide going into another chemical bath with water this time to create graphene oxide. We will also loop the graphite oxidation solution by using a fluid extractor to turn that back into the liquid form and send that back into the first chemical bath. Now that we have the graphene oxide, we can input this into this LCR here that has our liquid catalyst hydrazine and our solid catalyst, the white halide lamp. And then this will, after all that work, output graphene dust into our super chest. Just another thing we could tick off the list to make the quantum assembly. We are on the final stretch here in getting these made, so let's finish it off by encoding the last of the components. Back in front of our circuit assembly line, we can add ourselves the quantum assembly. Really start to feel things moving quick here. Well, let's go ahead and craft 32 of these quantum assemblies. And here we are. Our assemblies are done, and I think while we're on a roll, we go ahead and continue with circuit progression. For the quantum computer, we need to make recipe patterns for the quantum diode and the power IC. We will also need to make the next superconductor wire of the IV tier. To do so, we will need indium, which you can see here in the quest book. For us, the best way to get this will be to process the heavy metal waste that we've been gathering over time for our nuclear reactor. This will most likely be the way that we continue to get indium, and will get even better as we upgrade the nuclear line and expand it. Now that the indium is taken care of, we can make the patterns for the superconductor-based dust in our large mixer, and then that will be smelted in the EBF, and then the last recipe to make the finished wire in our IV assembler. Just checking here to make sure that this wirecraft will go through, and then we can make the pattern for the quantum computer for easier LUV circuits, and then send that, finally, into the large circuit assembly to be crafted. Eight quantum computers crafted, and I cannot say enough how amazing this large circuit assembler is. To craft these in single blocks would take so much longer, and I feel like it was worth the investment in infrastructure for sure. With the crafting marathon done for today, I want to take a minute and talk about future plans with the new base. I think the first thing we need to do is move over the AE2 setup. I'm going to try and keep everything intact to the old base, just in case I need to craft anything, but for now, we're going to put just the essentials here, and get this thing powered up, and some of the other components that we're going to need for AE2, and we should be good to go. Before we can get that powered, however, we will need to move over our turbines and find a nice spot for these, and leave room for expansion. For now, I'm going to keep the current turbines, but the plan is to eventually have the room filled with large rocket engines. The old base should be fine with power using the reserves we have built up in the battery tower, but once we are ready to move it, it will unfortunately have to void all of the power that we have stored inside. Time to disassemble the battery tower. This does mean that the old base will be left with no way to function, and if we decide to leave current systems over there for the time being, such as the plat line, we will also need to figure out power there again. Later on in the pack, there are some ways around this, but we aren't quite ready for that yet. Either way, this needs to migrate to the new base, as the more we move, and with the plans I have moving forward, that power storage will be necessary. I understand there is much to do before this base transition is complete, and I will spend the time it takes to have things moved over for the next episode. Now that we have power in the base and we are able to access all of our items from the original ME drives, we can work backwards to migrate all of the essential components. The move may seem a bit premature, but I felt like moving here would only further incentivize us to continue the building progress. I'm really excited to see how this turns out. Got the hardest part done. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't actually know. It seems like there may be some hurdles along the way, but we have the AE2 setup here, powered, and some basic drive storage. I do think these will move eventually once I see a more permanent spot for them, but for right now I just needed to get them in here so I feel a little bit more at home once I start to move the machines. It's just nice that we have all of our items, and that alone makes me feel like we're ready to start moving. Super cool. Like I said, I showed the battery tower installation down here. That's going to be integral to all the setup in the future, and some basic power. But I think that's where I'm going to end it today. This is a very much a different episode from what you guys are used to. Most of that is partly due because it's been so long since I posted. I figured I'd try to cram as much progress into one episode as I could, but I want to continue to do so And I think the new base will allow us to make that kind of progress. We have a lot of things running down the pipeline here for us to work on. So I'm super excited to get that rocking and rolling. I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me and being patient as I get this episode out. Hopefully things will start moving a little bit quicker now once I move all these things over. And it's like I said, it's no small task, but super excited to have that rolling here. Lots of decoration still needs to be done to the base, as you can see, and I'm not close to finishing the actual outlines. I've done a little bit more building here and there, but with something as big as this, it's going to take some time. I'm not a robot. I do have other things going on, but I'm going to keep rocking and rolling as much as I can. But I think that's where I'm going to end this one today. Like I said, if you guys did like the video, please give it a like and let me know that you guys are excited for the continuation of more progress and technological journey. And yeah, go ahead and subscribe if you guys are new. Hopefully you guys are excited as I am to continue. But I'm going to leave you guys here a little shot of the battery tower in its new home. Hopefully it's permanent home. But it's been Eagle. Peace.